Hello! So, PMDG has released the 737-600 for the Xbox, so it's now in the marketplace for Xbox users to go and purchase for Microsoft Flight Simulator. The main attraction of the 737 family from PMDG is that they are study-level aircraft. The big disadvantage for Xbox users is you cannot program the flight plan into the aircraft via the world map screen in the simulator. You have to do it via the FMC in the aircraft. So I'm going to show you the basics of programming a flight plan and where you can generate a flight plan. Because, you know, if you're not used to doing this, where on earth do you get a flight plan from? How do you find out what SIDs and stars and waypoints you should use? So I'm going to show you how to do that today. So let's go and jump inside the aeroplane. And we're going to go and visit a website called Simbrief. So Simbrief is free to register with, and it will generate flight plans for free. So we're going to go and log in to Simbrief. I'm going to log in as myself, obviously. Okay, and once we're logged in, the only difference, I have a paid account. I have a subscription with Navigraph, which gives me extras in Simbrief. The only difference a paid account gives you is more up-to-date information. You don't actually need it, but it may cause you the odd issue where the aeroplane is out of step with Simbrief in terms of navigation data, but it shouldn't cause you too many problems. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go to New Flight. And that opens up a big form where you can generate the details of your flight. So we're going to fill in our airline code, so it can be any 3 letters you like. If you want to go and look one up on the internet, you can find that out. So we can go to Google Bard, for example, instead of just searching for them. We could say, what is the ICAO code for, say, Delta Airlines? And it will have a think about it. The ICAO code for Delta is DAL. Okay? And it tells you all about what they are, which is really great. So this is a good use of Google Bard, which is free, by the way. So that's bard.google.com. So we could put in DAL if we wanted to. It makes no difference to the flight plan. So excuse me. So then we can invent a flight number. So we'll just put 123 in. Now we need the ICAO code for the airport we're leaving and the airport we're going to. So again, we can use Google Bard if we don't want to go searching these up on the internet. So we can say, what is the ICAO code for Stansted, which is where we are on the ground airport? And it will have a think about it. The ICAO code for Stansted Airport is EGSS. So we'll copy that and we'll paste it into our departure. And by the same token, we can say, what is the ICAO code for Edinburgh Airport? Is EGPH. Okay, so we can fill an alternate in as well. So if we decided we couldn't land at Edinburgh for some reason and needed to go somewhere else, we can fill that in and it will give us our alternate flight plan automatically. We're not going to bother. We're just doing the bare bones today. So aircraft type, we have to tell it what we're flying. So again, they are the ICAO codes for the airplanes. Now, if you look down here, B736 is the 737-600, so that's the one we want. And it's immediately invented a flight plan. Okay, so having invented the flight plan, we can just click generate straight away. We can manipulate that flight plan by changing the route to what we specifically want, and there's various alternate routes as well. So we'll just say generate with what it's given us. And what it's actually making is the pack of information that a real crew would take on board the aeroplane. So in this nice interface, it shows you a summary of that. But if you click View PDF, you get the exact printout that if you ever see the crew walking through the departure lounge with a folder under their arm, this is what's in that folder. And it goes on for pages and pages, and it shows them all sorts of danger areas and notices to airmen about, you know, things to be aware of en route. It also gives them a full weather forecast for the route of, you know, winds aloft and, you know, any winds to be aware of at different levels throughout their flight. It's really, really cool, and that's generated completely for you. We don't actually need any of that though. So remember I said bare bones today. So let's have a look. We want this. So this is the actual route. So we'll copy it. Now I'm going to open Notepad and I'm going to paste that over the top of what I had previously. Because I've been playing around with what I might show you. So we'll get that out of the way. So this is an actual airline route and we're going to use this to program the aeroplane. So what does it all mean? It begins with the ICAO code for the departure airfield and then the runway number. It ends with the ICAO code of the destination airfield and the runway number. After the departure airfield, it's got two pieces of information squashed together. There is the cruise airspeed that's anticipated and the flight level you're going to fly at. So that's in hundreds of feet. So 360 times 100 is 36,000 feet. So that will be our cruise level for the flight. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat today. So the next thing you're going to see is the standard instrument departure. So that's the sequence of waypoints and heights to leave Stansted on. So like an accepted departure route. The departure route ends at this waypoint. Then you've got an airway that leads to another waypoint, another airway that leads to another waypoint, and another airway to another waypoint, and finally another airway to a waypoint, and then a standard terminal arrival route, or STAR, that leads to Edinburgh. So again, that's a sequence of waypoints, speeds and altitudes you must follow to get to the approach for runway 24 for Edinburgh. So let's go, before we actually go and program that, how do I know that those bits and pieces were which? Or, which was which? So obviously it begins with an airfield. Then it's got the speed and height. If you see a mixture of letters and numbers that's usually 6 characters long, that's going to be a SID or a star. If you see 5 characters, that's a waypoint. If you see less than 6 characters, that is a mixture of letters and numbers, that's an airway. If you see 5 characters, waypoint, airway. 3 characters is always a VOR, so a radio navigation beacon, but they're also used for GPS navigation as well because their locations are known. So then airway, VOR, airway, waypoint, standard terminal arrival route, and then the destination airfield. So by looking at the form of the letters, you can figure out what's what and the order they're in. Okay, so let's go and get the 737 up and running and we'll program that route in. So the first thing we do in the 737 is go up overhead and go and turn the battery on and cage it. The next thing we're going to do is go down to the tablet, the FMC, Flight Management Computer. And we're going to go to the FS Actions menu and we're going to go to Ground Services and we're going to request ground power. So if we look outside, that brings this little generator into existence and then a cable will attach itself. You can see that if we pull the camera around, that cable umbilical cable just plugged in. So this is going to generate electric for the aircraft. When it's connected, it changes to say release, which if we clicked it would obviously unplug it. Okay, so once that's plugged in, we can go back overhead and we can go and turn the ground power on. So we flick that switch downwards and lots of bits and pieces on the aeroplane fire up all of a sudden. So first thing we do once we have power to the aeroplane is turn the emergency lights to armed and close the switch. We also go and confirm that the position lights are on steady, which they should be out of the box with the aircraft. I think the reason it's left on steady is then as soon as the aircraft has power, then the lights come on the end of the wings to tell anybody around the aircraft that there's actually somebody inside the aircraft getting it ready. So not under the wings, underneath the body. Okay, so next thing we go and do is go and turn on the window heats to warm them up, go and turn on the probe heats to warm them up, and then we can go down to the flight management computer again and we can actually program our route. So if we've been nosing around in other menus, all we have to do is press the menu button to get back, and then we're at the top level of the FMC. It's a good point actually. I've missed something out. We're going to go back overhead. This is what happens when you're busy talking. We need to go and turn on the inertial navigation system because it takes a few minutes to fire up. So we go and turn both of these switches to nav. So we wait for this to say align, then do the other one. So this is the left and right systems for inertial navigation. And then to find out how long it's going to take, you can rotate the knob above to HDG STS. If you've got this on realistic, it will come up saying a number of minutes in here. So obviously I've not got it on realistic, which speeds it up because it can take 8 or 9 minutes. To find out where you do that, you can go into the PMDG setup menu, go to options and simulation, and then you've got IRS options, and you can say whether it's realistic, fast or instant. Yeah, so I've got it on fast, so it's just going to get on and do it. Okay, so once you've been nosing around, if you're lost, you can just press menu to come straight back to the top. So it's asking us to put in our position in the world, the IRS position, so giving the inertial navigation system a reference position to start with. So we'll go to the FMC page, and at the bottom right it says POS init. So the general rule when you're working through programming the aircraft up is the bottom right option tends to be the next thing to do. So POS init, and then we need to know what to fill into this field, the IRS position. So mandatory fields are square boxes, optional fields are hyphens. Yeah, so we will fill in the reference airport while we're here. So it's EGSS, which is Stansted Airport. And you can see it's actually got a location for the airfield, but that's going to be the centre of the airfield complex, not necessarily where we are. Yeah, so you'll notice POS init's got 3 pages. If we go to the next page, you can see there's the actual GPS unit on the aircraft telling us where the aircraft is. So if we click the soft key next to one of those, it copies it into the scratch pad. So the scratch pad is where we can key things in ourselves. So you can see I've just typed 4 letter A's in there. We can hit the clear button to backspace through them. So that really accounts for everything around the FMC. If you want to copy a value, you just click the soft key next to it and it will copy it into the scratch pad for you. So then if we go previous page back to where we were, we can drop this in to an empty field by just pressing the button next to the empty field, and it will fill it in. In this case it actually makes that disappear, which isn't the most intuitive thing in the world, but it's just the way it works. So the next thing we do is go to the route page. So we follow this general idea, bottom right corner. So we're going to say where we're going from and to today. Notice it's got our reference airport in the scratch pad already. That's a bit of a time saver that's built into the system. So we've already got that typed in. We just click on origin and it populates it. We can also say what runway we're leaving on. So if we go and look at our plan that we pasted from Simbrief, we're leaving on runway 04. Okay, so we type in 04 into the scratch pad and then drop it onto the runway. We're going to Edinburgh. So code for Edinburgh is EGPH. EGPH. We can drop that in. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is the actual route between Stansted and Edinburgh. So if we don't go on to setting up departures or arrivals or anything like that yet, we go to next page and you get this empty screen. So what on earth do you fill into here? We put in routes and waypoints. Okay, so we want a waypoint to begin with, so there's our first waypoint. Because remember, the route of how we get to the first waypoint is a standard instrument departure, which we haven't programmed yet. So we actually start with the first waypoint of the route, so it's UTAVA. So UTAVA. We may even be able to, thinking about this, to put UTAV1S in straight away in here. So UTAV1S. Just double check that, UTAV1S. Let's see if it will let us. No. So I'll show you how you can work around this to go and put the departure and arrival in afterwards. So we put in our first waypoint. Then we're going via the Q75 airway to Buzad. So airways go on the left, waypoints go on the right. So you can think of the waypoints as intersections where the route changes. Yeah, so like you're meeting a junction in the sky and you're going a different direction. So we want Q75 to BZ. Q75 to BUZAD. And then after BUZAD we go T420 to TNT. T420 to TNT, and drop that in. And then UN57 to POL. So UN57 to POL. It's the Pole Hill VOR. And then UN601 to INPIP. So UN601 to INPIP. And then we can activate that route. We're not doing any more because after INPIP we've got the standard standard terminal arrival route. So we'll execute that change. And now we can go straight onto performance initialization. I'm not going to do that because I want to complete this story for you. So we're going to go, we'll come back to doing, we can either go perf init here, which is performance, setting up the, how heavy the aeroplane is, that kind of thing, or we can just click on initref to do it. We'll do it via initref in a minute. So first of all we're going to go to departure arrival because I want to finish this story for you. So we haven't said how we're leaving Stansted. So we're going to depart Stansted. It knows we're using runway 4 already, but we wanted to use the UTAV 1S standard instrument departure. So it's not on the list of the SIDS. So we go next page. Next page. UTAV 1S, there it is. So there we go. So notice at the moment it hasn't actually done it, it's just lit up the execute button. So we've kind of suggested this is what we want. If we say execute, it becomes the active route. Okay? If we want to go back and then set the departure immediately, we can just go to the index and it brings us back to the index page of the depart button. We can do the same thing by pressing the depart button. So we want to set up the arrival into Edinburgh. Normally you wouldn't do this on the ground at the departure, you would do this in the air, but we're going to do it because the route might change en route. The weather might change, there might be an incident at the airport, you never know. So arrival, we want to do the NP1E into runway 24. So we'll use ILS for runway 24 and we want the NP1E standard terminal arrival route, or STAR. And we execute the change. So if we go and look in the legs page now, you should see everything we've just programmed. But notice there's a load of stuff we didn't program. So these will be all of the waypoints, like between BUZAD and TNT, for example. BUZAD, there's Olney, Welin, Ukapa, Timpu and Elvos are waypoints between BUZAD and TNT. So within Airway T420 were all of those waypoints. So it's actually worked as a shortcut to program tons of waypoints for us. Does that make sense? So all we're doing here is what's called a gross check. We're going to skip through our route to make sure there's no discontinuities, and there's one. And I knew there would be one. So what this is between the end of the standard instrument departure and the beginning of the approach into Edinburgh, the standard terminal arrival route, and the approach into Edinburgh, there's a gap in the flight plan, which is essentially our own navigation. So we could just delete this gap. In other words, the aeroplane will go straight from Tartan straight to CI24. So to do that, we just select CI24 and then pull it up over the top by clicking on the blank area, and it will pull everything up. Notice everything's gone grey and it says mod. If we execute, that becomes act or active again. So the active route. Okay, so we can carry on down, and that's the end of the route. So we're just looking for discontinuities, and there aren't any now, so we've got a complete route. If you want to check that on the map in the aeroplane, because you can see screens have come alive now, you can actually see it already, but if you change the mode of this navigation screen or navigation display, there's a knob up here with app, VOR, map and PLN next to it. If you roll that right to PLN, the screen will center and a marker will come up with CTR and a waypoint name, your first waypoint of your route. You can then notice there's a step option at the bottom right of the FMC, so you can press step and the center marker will move down and this screen will remain centered. So we can go through our route one waypoint at a time, checking that it looks good. We can zoom in and out as well, so we can get some more sense of where we are. So if we get an 80-mile range, for example, and go step, 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 step. So you notice a lot of these waypoints are along the airways. God, I've got a tickly cough this morning. And then there's the final turn into Edinburgh. Okay. So if you want to get this back to be aircraft oriented, you just roll it back towards map view and it shows like a compass rose. And we might want to change the zoom level back down to manage our departure from Stansted. Okay. So should we carry on and get this aeroplane into the air? So we've essentially programmed the route. Well, we haven't actually finished that though. Let's come down. Remember we said we hadn't done the performance data? So we'll go to the init ref page. So let's go and have a look at our route again. We're going to be flying at flight level 360 today. So we need that for the cruise altitude. So we can either type in 36,000 or 360 and it will understand both. So we'll just put 360 and drop that in. From that it's calculated the outside air temperature that's expected at that altitude. So that will help with programming the environment control system of the aircraft, which it does fully automatically, I should say. So zero fuel weight, this is where this gets really clever in the simulator, in Flight Sim, that this will calculate everything for you. So you click on the empty zero fuel weight value and click again and it just fills it in for you. Then you can put in reserve fuel, so how much fuel you want left over in thousands of pounds, just in case you need to do a go around or anything like that. So we'll put £1,000 of reserves in. Cost index, so this is a number that governs how aggressively the aircraft can accelerate. So if we go and look back on our flight plan in Simbrief, you'll see a CI value, so 54. What it actually means, it's a complicated formula, but it governs how aggressively the aircraft can accelerate or climb. Yeah? So the higher the number, the more aggressively or the more fuel it can burn, basically. So execute those changes. And we can go to N1 limit now, so again, bottom right of the screen. This is the climb profile for the aeroplane, so for specific circumstances, and we're not going to get into it today, you might want to derate your climb, so not climb as aggressively as you might. Because you might not be climbing to, you know, a very high altitude very quickly, or your standard instrument departure might not warrant a really steep climb out. So you can actually derate it and do it more efficiently and run the engines under spec. Also, you can go to takeoff screen now. So we're going to configure the airplane's takeoff roll. So we're going to say 5 degrees of flaps, which is standard for a 737. And then we can click the next to these three numbers that have just been generated. These are the V speeds. The one we'll take notice of is the VR, which is the rotate speed. So when we click each of these buttons, it copies it across. So these are the numbers that will appear next to the indicated airspeed ribbon when we're rolling down the runway, and we know when we get to 129 the co-pilot will shout out rotate. Centre of gravity, so we click the button next to that and it calculates it, and we click it again and it tells us a trim number. So what this is for setting this trim wheel. So this is the elevator trim in the 737, so we're going to roll this wheel until the needle gets to the value. And what this means is when we accelerate down the runway, at the point we are at rotate speed, the aeroplane will be perfectly balanced. So it won't be trying to take off on its own, or it won't be trying to jam the nose wheel into the ground. Yeah, so it means basically as you begin to climb out, the plane is going to be balanced. So we've done that, and we're essentially done with the route at that point. So we might want to leave this screen on the legs page, which always shows us the next few legs. And we might, on the second FMC over here, I might want to leave that on the progress screen. So we go to FMC and show progress. And that shows you a burn down calculation for your fuel towards the destination and your ETAs. Yeah, so the legs page is going to show us distances and altitudes and any speed restrictions. The progress page shows us timings and fuel burn down and distance to go. So they're quite good to have one on each screen. Okay. What do we need to do then? What haven't we done? Let's go and have a look around. So we've done the flight plan. So next we're going to go to the master control panel for the autopilot. We're going to set it for departure. So runway heading, we're going to set this basically as a backup. We're probably not going to use it. We're going to set it to the same direction as the runway. So this is where it gets a bit fiddly, because if you haven't got Navigraph, you're not going to be able to find out the exact runway direction. If you have got Navigraph, as I have, I'm going to show you a trick as well. So we had this flight plan, yes? So let's go into Navigraph. I'm going to do a new flight, and it doesn't know anything about where we're going yet. I can click on the pencil and I can paste in the route generated from Simbrief and press enter, and there's the route. It's also pulled out the charts that make sense to see. So there's the UTAVA 1S, there's the airport diagram for Stansted. So if you have been wondering about buying Simbrief, it's worth it purely for this. So we're taking off runway 04. The actual direction of runway 04 is 42 degrees. That's what I was really after. Again, you don't need this. You could put 40 degrees and it would be fine. Altitude, we're going to put in directly straight into our cruise altitude. So this is like simplifying it. In the real world, you wouldn't do this. You would be cleared into a step climb to a cleared altitude and then given permission to climb further during the route. But we're just going to keep this simple today, putting in our cruise altitude straight away while we're on the ground. We're going to turn on the flight directors. There are two of them, two switches. We turn them both on. We set the indicated airspeed target for the auto throttle. So we'll set it out to 220 knots. We'll also we can go and switch on the autopilot modes before it's engaged. So as long as you've got a fully programmed flight plan and performance data and the flight directors are on, you should be able to pre-select the mode the autopilot will be in when you turn it on. So we're going to say lateral navigation mode, which means it will follow the waypoints of our plan. We're also going to say vertical navigation mode, which means it will follow any altitude restrictions. So you can see through these first few waypoints and speed restrictions, it wants us to get to 250 knots and to go to 5,000 feet, above 3,000, 5,000, 5,000, and so on and so forth. So as you flick through the pages, then suddenly it's climbing like 14,000. So the airplane can follow that on its own if you press VNAV, but you have to have a fully configured flight plan for it to do it. If you don't want to do that, you can do a level change, in which case the airplane will do its best to get to the target altitude in one go, and it will pay no attention to the restrictions. So we'll leave it on LNAV and VNAV. Okay, so the other thing you might want to do is go and set the auto brake to rejected takeoff. So that's arming the brakes in case you need to stop the aircraft from taking off in an emergency. The other thing we need to do is calibrate the altitude or the barometric pressure. So you can see the altitude works by reading the air pressure outside the aircraft. If we press B, it shortcuts it. So you can see if you can't press B, if you haven't got a keyboard, you can roll the knob on the barometric pressure up here and you'll see this changing. So you can dial it in, but I can press B because I've got a keyboard plugged in and it shortcuts doing that for you. Okay, So we're back into the getting the airplane ready. So seatbelt sign can go to auto. Yaw dampers can go to on. We can preset the cabin air pressure to our cruise altitude, so the environmental control system I should say. So we tell it we're going to be flying at 36,000 feet and it does everything it needs to in terms of pressurising and heating the cabin appropriately. We turn aft fuel pump number 1 to on. And then we turn on the auxiliary power unit. So the APU is a small jet engine in the back of the airplane that is used to provide electrical power and to provide compressed air to spin up the main engines. So having turned on the APU, and that fuel supply was for the APU, you will see this exhaust gas temperature needle will shoot round to about 7 and then fall back to 4. It takes a few seconds, there it goes. If we go and look outside the aeroplane and scoot around the back, that's the exit for the exhaust for the APU. That's the inlet for it. So it's a small jet engine in the tail. So you'll notice this needle is now falling down towards 4. When it falls as far as 4, we can switch the power generation for the aircraft over to the APU. So you'll notice this light will come on, there it goes. So this is the APU switches here. So this is called the crossfeed panel, or bus transfer panel. So you can bus transfer over to the APU. So we'll flick the switches downwards. Now the electrical power on the aircraft is being provided by the auxiliary power unit, not by ground power anymore. So we can immediately go down to the MCDU, or sorry, the FMC in a Boeing. We can press the menu button, go to FS Actions, go to Ground Services, and we can release the ground power. So they can unplug it from the aircraft. While we're here, we will also make sure that, I'm just going to press F to change our view. We'll also make sure the parking brake is on, so it's up, which means we can remove the chocks as well. And that is a trigger in the 737s for the door to close and the stairs to be moved away from the aircraft. So give them a few seconds and they'll reverse away with a bit of luck. There they go. Okay, so back overhead. As soon as we're starting to get ready to start the engines, we need to put the anti-collision lights on. So then we go and turn all of the fuel pumps on. We turn on the APU bleed. So this allows the compressed air being generated by the APU to be piped to the engines. And we are essentially now ready to either push back or start the engines. Now we are not on a gate. We are on the corner of the terminal here at Stansted Airport. This is the freeware scenery from Flight Sim 2, by the way, of Stansted. It's really, really lovely. It's a bit of a frame rate hit, but it looks amazing. Okay, so how do we start the engines? We turn the starter system for the engine number 2, or the right engine, to GRD. We choose an ignition system, so we can use left or right. So we'll go matched with engine side, it doesn't matter. Go for the right engine, and you can see the N2 speeds coming up. So that's the compressed air spinning up the gas turbine. When it gets to 20%, you can advance the starter lever for engine number 2 on the central console, and it will continue on past. The temperature will go up, the fuel flow is increasing, it's been ignited, and the engine is kind of bootstrapped and up it comes. So when the start sequence is complete, the switch for the starter will go back to off all on its own. So give it a few seconds. Okay, then we can go switch for the left engine over to GRD. We'll use the left ignition system. So you can see the N2 number is coming up. That's the gas turbine being pushed around by the compressed air. When it gets to 20%, we can advance the starter lever for engine number 1. Exhaust gas temperature comes up. Fuel flow is increasing. Notice we have a config error. When I turned on the fuel pumps, I didn't turn on all of them. I only turned on the wing pumps. Yeah, so I did it on purpose really, so you would see this. So we have this config error. All it really means is we haven't turned on, there's fuel in the central tanks and we haven't got the fuel pumps on. So we're going to turn them on. Yeah, so the lights go out and the warning goes away. So it's just to make you aware of. I've seen a lot of people do that. I've done it as well myself in the past. You can correct it in flight, and again you'll notice there's not as much fuel, or it will drain from the central tank first. So you will get another warning on a longer flight. If you have overfueled your aircraft, you will get the central tank will run out first, and then you'll turn the central pumps off first. Okay, so engines are up and running. So back overhead, on the bus transfer section, we no longer need the APU even though it's running, so we can cross-feed over to the engines now, which are the outer two switches on the bus transfer panel. So the engines can now generate electricity for the aircraft, not the APU. We don't need it anymore. So we switch over to the engines for power generation. That has automatically switched off the connection of using power from the APU. So we can turn off the APU bleed, and we can turn off the APU itself. Yeah. So that exhaust gas temperature will gently fall on the APU as it spins down now. It takes it a little while. Okay, so we've done engine start. So back overhead, we're going to go and turn on the hydraulic pumps, which control all the control surfaces around the aircraft. We're going to turn the air conditioning packs to auto. They require compressed air to work, so they're going to pressurize and set the environmental control system for the cabin correctly. We're going to turn the taxi lights to on, and we're going to essentially at this point go taxi out. So I'm going to set the flaps to 5 degrees. So I've just used that on my controller, so the flap lever over there is moved, and you can see the flaps travelling on this little dial over here. So something I haven't done while we've been busy running the aircraft is I haven't chosen the correct control configuration for this aeroplane. So I'm just going to go and skip over to the controller configuration here. So I've got the appropriate profile for my controls. Okay, so let's just try that. Yep, the throttles are moving nicely. So we're going to come off the parking brake. To do that I need to hold the toe brakes on, and then I should be able to. Now, I've seen this bug a lot recently. I think it's something to do with my simulator. I'm just going to unplug my controls for a moment and plug them back in again. Yeah, there we go. It was misbehaving. There we go. So I've now been able to hold the toe brakes down. I couldn't make the toe brakes move. So as soon as I did that, the parking brake came off on its own. So all you need to do is hold the toe brakes on for a moment and the parking brake should release. So then I'm going to release the toe brakes, ease the throttle forwards, and start steering right on the nose wheel. I'm doing this as a demonstration really of just how tightly you can turn the 737. So if we sit up in the cockpit a little bit, you can see out of the nose to see how much room we've got. If we were to look outside, you can actually see, look, we can turn within its own length. I just wanted to demonstrate that to you. Obviously in the real world you would push back. But we're just demonstrating all sorts of different things today that you can get away with in the simulator. So we're going to follow... He's going the wrong way. Oh, perhaps he's just come in. So we'll follow round this way, we'll follow him, and then we're going to go down to runway 04, so we're going to have to taxi the whole length of the runway today. gives us a chance to look at this Stansted scenery. There's a lot of aeroplanes parked here, aren't there? The entire Ryanair fleet by the look of it. So we will have to taxi all the way down to runway 04. And there's somebody going the wrong way. Probably an AI aeroplane, I would imagine. So we're going to avoid them. We'll go and crisscross back round. No doubt they'll go head on with us at some point. But that gives us even more of a chance to see the Stansted scenery. So as I said, this is the free version of Stansted from FlightSim.2. There is a commercial version made by Builds, which takes it up in even further notch, but I haven't bought that yet. I might later on and do a video specifically looking around it. I have a horrible feeling it would crater the frame rate, but I don't want to say that conclusively. You can see the interior of some of the terminals has actually been built, which is quite cool. The main thing it does is puts all the proper markings on all the taxiways and all the proper signage around it, on the on the ground and on the signs dotted around. FedEx terminal. It's an AI plane. Yeah, AI planes don't land properly, do they? It's quite amusing. Okay, is there anything we need to be doing on our way down the runway? We've got the target airspeed ready. I guess we could get TCAS ready. So we'll go and put it onto TARA. We'll go and turn on, strictly speaking for takeoff, you shouldn't have it in TARA, it should only be TA, so the autopilot won't try to avoid other aeroplanes. And then you go to TARA once you're at altitude. Look, he's going to try and go head on. They're as bad as the blooming vans, aren't they? Going to try and avoid him. What's the betting he tries to go head on again? So that's quite cool. Look, they've got the fire exercise aircraft over on the far side of the airfield over there. Okay, let's have a look at where we are in the airfield. We're just coming down, so we'll leave this exit, we'll go for the next one. We won't need the whole runway anyway, because we're in a 737-600. So the main aim of today really was to show you how you can program the FMC and how you can generate a route for it from Simbrief. Because with an Xbox, you haven't got an easy way of creating a route, because you can't use that world map screen with the PMDG 737. It's not going to populate the aircraft, and this method works for any of the big steady level jets, to be honest. So, the Mad Dog, the Airbus is the Phoenix Airbus, for example. Any of them that don't take instruction. I think the A310 won't use the world map screen either. have no idea why the AI planes are using runway 22 when the wind supports runway 04. Yeah, there's another plane coming in, look. Hopefully he'll disappear just before we... Oh no, he's doing a go around because he saw me on the runway. He probably realised, what are we doing landing with the wind? Okay, so we're ready to go, but we have a couple more things to do. We need to go and put the lights onto strobe. We need to go and turn on the landing lights. So below 10,000 feet, commercial traffic have the landing lights on. We'll turn on the auto throttle. Now, the way you would see a real plane do this is they would hit the toga button. The airplane will manage its departure fully automatically. So we'll zoom in slightly so you get to see the screen here. So I am controlling it at the moment. So we're waiting for the rotate marker to come up. So we're holding a small amount of right stick or right rudder to hold the center line. So as the rotate, you want no more than 3 degrees per second. It's a bit actually quite windy today. Okay, so then you lift the gear. So you're trying to hold this in line. And if you really want to cheat now, you just go press the autopilot button and jobs are good. And we want VNAV though. And the airplane should take over doing everything now.
Traffic.
This should be interesting. Let's see what it does with the traffic, because TCAS is on TARA. And there he is, look, it's going to go directly underneath us. That's that AI traffic. So I've raised the flaps. The autopilot won't control the flaps for you. And we're on our way to Edinburgh. So within the aeroplane, if you're using this on an Xbox, you obviously won't be able to go and look at another screen to see where you are. So you'll be going via this map screen most of the time. The navigation display within the aircraft is very flexible, so you just leave it on map mode and then you can control the zoom. And it will show you along your flight plan. You can turn on and off much more information. So you can turn on other waypoints in the neighbourhood, for example. VOR stations. Something that's worth pointing out as well, yeah, it should be straightening out. It's leveling out a bit late, isn't it? Okay, it's done it. So notice it's varying the throttle. It's trying to hit target airspeeds and altitudes as per the restrictions we saw earlier on the route. So 250 knots above 3,000, but no higher than 5,000 for the next one. So it's gone to 5,000 early. And it's just hovering around below 250 knots. So it's basically, the VNAV is following the restrictions. So as and when it can climb, it will. So once we go through Utava, which is just coming up here, it will start climbing again. So we have a look outside. There's a couple of other things to pay attention to. So I don't know if this will have the... I'm just reading down through the notes. Yeah, we probably need to look at the PDF. Has it got the transition altitude in it? Not on the first page by the look of it. So let's go down and look at the... we want to look at the departure. So there's the route. That's the load sheet. That's the climb performance plan, flight plan. The reason I'm looking for this is because there's something important you need to know about. Departure airport detailed information. Scroll past all of this. Where's the weather? That's interesting. Okay, we're going to cheat slightly. I can't remember where to look this up from. We're looking for the transition altitude at the departure airfield. So we can obviously get it from Navigraph, but I wanted to find out if we can get it from Simbrief for you to make it easy for you. So if we go and look at that departure, we've got a transition altitude of 6,000 feet, which we will have just come through. So when you get to the transition altitude, you have to press the standard button, which puts you on a barometric pressure of 2992 or 1013 hectopascals. But while it's climbing out and getting on with that now, what we're going to do is search the PDF for 6,000. There it is. So it's 6,000 feet. That's not transition now. So maybe it doesn't give you it. Anyway. We're on our way to Edinburgh. So I'm not going to make you sit through the whole flight today, but the main takeaway was how you get that route plan into the aeroplane. So we can generate the route, because obviously you can't use the world map screen. You can use Simbrief to generate the route, and then you can borrow the route from here, and you can make sense of this and put it into the aeroplane. So I'm going to pause recording at this point, and I'll rejoin you on descent into Edinburgh. Okay, I'm just coming back for a few moments. I've just done a little bit of reading. The reason I couldn't find the transition altitude on the operational flight plan is because it's not on there. It only appears on the charts. I suspected it might be in the operational flight plan, but I was mistaken. So anyway, there you go. So the transition altitude you'll have to look up from charts, but take it as read that most of the UK is 6,000 feet. Across the entire United States it's 18,000 feet. It varies all over Europe, different heights. But yeah, most of the UK is 6,000. So just thought I'd let you know that. Anyway, let's let the flight get on with itself, and I'll meet you on descent into Edinburgh. Okay, back with you. So we're just approaching the top of descent as marked on the flight plan in the aircraft. So we need to set a target altitude for the aeroplane to descend to. So what we're going to do is find out the altitude of the airport. Okay, so to do that, we can either go and look at the departure airport information in here. So if we show, sorry, that's the departure. I want the destination airport. So arrival airport, show details. Elevation 136 feet, so it's in your flight plan. Yeah. So we can essentially say we want to descend to 660 feet, or whatever it was. Sorry, where was it? Arrival airport, 136 feet. So we can either, we need to add 2,500 feet to that for the ILS, for the entry into the feathers. So we'll go for 2,600 feet for our altitude we're going to descend down to. But remember, if we use VNav, it will descend and follow any restrictions along the way automatically for us. So we just say 2,600 feet, and the aeroplane's actually beginning its descent, look. So it's descending already. So that's VNav doing its job, but it has to have a target altitude to get to. So if we go and look on the legs page, we can see the speed is coming off. While we were in cruise, I went and had a little look, and yeah, absolutely can confirm. It actually shows up on the charts as well. If you go and look at the charts, you obviously won't have this unless you've got Navigraph, but you can go and buy a Navigraph subscription without having Flight Simulator on the PC. It will work just the same. Yeah, you just won't. I don't think you'll get the aircraft showing up on the maps though. So you can see I get a little aircraft marker. You probably just won't get that on the Xbox, unless I'm misinformed and they've done some trick with the Xbox now to do that. So yeah, you will notice at the top of this approach chart, or sorry, arrival chart into Edinburgh, it says transition altitude or transition level by ATC. Yeah, so it's usually, it will be given out by the ATC, because obviously it varies based on weather as well. But having said that, if we go and look at the approach chart for the ILS, it's actually got the transition altitude in it. So you can see it just here, look, transition altitude 6,000 feet. The only reason this is important is the point at which you suddenly retune your barometric pressure to the barometric pressure at ground level of the airfield. So in our case, we can go and find that out. The shortcut in the simulator, of course, is to press B, and it will just do it for you. But if we want to find out within Navigraph, if you have Navigraph installed, you can pull up the information on Edinburgh, for example, and we can go to the weather section, and it will tell us the hectopascals and the inches in mercury. So 3003. But we don't need to do it just yet. So we're coming down with VNav on. The aeroplane should automatically slow down to 250 knots at 10,000 feet. So you can see here's the route in on the navigation display. So we're coming in slowly. There's something else that's worth looking at here. If we click center again and again, we get a navigation display. So you've got the targets, and you've also got your actual travel direction, which is all quite cool, I think. And we can zoom in and out on that as well, I think. Yeah, there we go, look. So, and then once you get zoomed out far enough, look, you get the ground plot as well. This really is very, very clever stuff. There's an awful lot of information packed into here, isn't there? We obviously don't need to see the ground yet, so we can zoom in a bit more. Obviously, the more you zoom in, the more you get useful information. It kind of declutters automatically, so you're getting the next target showing up, and you're getting a mile counter here and the compass rose. It's all very good. So before we get anywhere near Edinburgh, as we are descending, while the autopilot is looking after us, we need to go and find out about Edinburgh. So I'm going to use, again, Navigraph to do this. You can find plates on the internet which will give you all this information, but you can also find a lot of this out from the flight plan as well. So you've got the arrival airport information here. Does it give us the ILS? It probably won't, it's only the routing information. So again, this is a reason to go and get Navigraph. So 108.9 and 240 degrees for the ILS. So back in the aircraft we want 108.9 on nav 1 and nav 2. So 10890 and transfer that to active, and 10890 transfer that to active. So that's the navigation radios configured on the ILS frequency. We want 240 degrees on the course on both sides, so we'll go left to 240 and same on the co-pilot side of the cockpit. So the course and the nav radios are configured now for the final approach into Edinburgh. You will notice the aircraft is going to manage deceleration itself on the way in, so we can actually go and look and see what it's going to do. So it's going to come down to 250 knots for Eskdale. It's going to do 230 knots for Tartan, 197 knots, that's the beginning of the approach. And then it's going to slowly come off the speed, and we'll be managing it the last bit basically. So coming down to 20,000 feet. We never turned off the landing lights, did we? So above 10,000 feet we should have turned off the landing lights. Where I was busy talking about other things, it's so easy to get distracted. That's why you have two crew on the real plane. They'll be following procedures and checking each other's work. And obviously they do this day in, day out, all day, every day. Unlike me, I don't even have the printed procedure for the flight in front of me. All I had was the first few steps written down. The rest of it comes down to training, practice, procedure, routine, and doing your job professionally, which I'm not doing. So you can see the airplane is struggling to maintain speed, so we're going to help it. We're going to throw the spoilers out. And help it get down to the target airspeed. So in case you've not seen them, spoilers, basically it lifts the top surface of the wing up. You can see that there. Makes the aeroplane less aerodynamic. So we looked up on Navigraph, didn't we? So we want 30.03 when we come down to the transition altitude, which is 6,000 feet for Edinburgh. So you can see the aeroplane is changing course. For the next leg. There is a crosswind, 16 knots. So we can go and configure the auto brakes. Actually we don't need to, we're just going to use manual braking so I can illustrate a few things to you on landing. Should we brighten this up a bit in here? Dull, isn't it, in the cockpit, so we'll go and turn on the background lighting of the various wordings around the place. There's another one up here. So you can see there's the lighting for the various words. Okay, so we can come off the spoilers now. So you can see that vector is pointing down towards Tartan. It's still not going to manage to quite get there in time, so we're going to put some spoilers out to help it. We're creeping above 250 knots, and we're not allowed to go faster than 250 at 10,000 feet, so we're going to help the aeroplane out a little bit here. When we come down to 10,000, we need to go and put the landing lights back on, remember. How we're looking for weather. It's suitably cloudy and horrible today, isn't it, in the UK? So should we go and look at the radio frequencies? So we've got Edinburgh, approach ATIS 131355, so we can have a listen to it. Be a bit of fun along the way, wouldn't it? 131355. And switch it on.
Edinburgh Airport information, Quebec 1200 Zulu. Wind tree 1 at tree. Visibility 6. Sky condition, ceiling 1,800 feet overcast. Temperature 16. Dew point 10. Altimeter tree 0.0 tree. ILS runway 6 in use. Landing and departing runway 6. VFR aircraft, see direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact, you have Quebec.
So there we go.
Edinburgh Airport information.
And that just loops round and round and round. So we're going to detune the radio so we don't hear it again and again and again. But you can obviously listen to that and program the aircraft on your way in. So we just stopped at 10,000 feet. So it's looking to come down to 7,000 at Tartan, but it's looking to decelerate. That's why it raised the nose gently there. So you'll see the target airspeed keep changing as we make these different decelerations. So we're at 240 at the moment. We should be going for 230 at Tartan. So we'll help it. We'll go and stick the spoilers out now. So when it comes to do it, it will be able to do it easily. So on the map you can now see there's the airfield. There's our turn out towards the approach, and then we turn into the approach. So as we start decelerating, we need to control the flaps. The airplane won't do that for us. And we can get the gear down and everything else in good time. So we're below 10,000 feet now. So we'll get the landing lights on. We're going to be landing incredibly heavy. We just went with the stock fuel load that the simulator gives us. Oh, something else we missed along the way. We shouldn't have had the landing gear lever up all the flight. We should have put it into the off position as soon as the landing gear was up. Otherwise you're charging the hydraulics for the landing gear the entire time. So it's saying here drag required. So it lifted the nose, and we've obviously got the spoilers out already, so it will actually tell you if it can't do what it's being asked. So we'll go for first stage of flaps. You can see that they introduce a new airspeed limit to the aircraft. You can see there's an up sign here. Once we go past that, we can actually drop the gear. I'm going to remove the spoilers. So let's zoom in on this display a little bit. So we've got a 20-mile range on it now, so we can see the airfield over here, and we'll see the corner coming, and we'll see the ground appearing as we get closer to it. So we're coming down to 6,000 feet, so we come off the standard barometric pressure, and we needed, can we remember the weather? Edinburgh is 30.03, so we roll this round to get 30.03. There we go. So then this will be accurate to the ground level, because remember altimeters work by reading air pressure. So as the weather changes, altimeters are thrown out. They're not entirely accurate. Okay. So when we've turned the corner towards the runway, we'll also switch the navigation display into approach mode, which will give us a nice clear indication of the glide slope and the localizer, which we can use to do an instrument approach. I think we're going to be pretty good anyway, so we go for the next stage of flaps. Again, knowing the limits for each level of flaps, you just need to know your aeroplane. So obviously if you're experienced at flying a particular model, you'll know what the limits are for each setting of flaps. So we've gone to 10 degrees of flaps now. Yeah, we could go for gear down now. So let's go and do that. Should we go and watch it happen? So we've got 10 degrees of flaps and the gear down, landing lights are on. We're still in VNAV mode, we're still in LNAV mode, so the plane's pretty much flying itself. We will change the heading bug to the direction of the runway, which is 270. Or 240, sorry, not 270. So everything will line up in case we need to use heading mode for whatever reason. So you can see we are approaching the turn for final approach. So if we look out of the window, I was going to say ha ha, let's see if we can see Edinburgh, but we're not going to see a thing, are we? It's out there in the fog behind us somewhere, behind that bank of cloud, which has expertly appeared in exactly the right place so we don't see anything. And this is why we practice instrument approaches. Okay, so we're getting closer. The lovely thing about the 737-600 is it's very light, but it has the same amount of thrust as its bigger brothers, so there we go, we can see the airport at last. There's the runway, there's the terminal buildings. So we'll be doing a turn anytime soon. So we can increase the turn rate by turning this knob here and let it do a 30-degree turn, or a 30-degree bank in the turn. So you'll see that happen in a moment. So we're just watching that navigation display, watching what's going on, keeping an eye on the legs, and we're going to be coming down to these are maximum speeds. Because at full flaps, the 737-600 can fly remarkably slowly for a big jet. So we're just coming up to the turn. Again, we're not going to see anything outside for the next little while, so we may as well just concentrate on these two screens. We move the view up so we do see something when we do break out of the cloud. So here we go, the flight director should start going left, there it goes. It's turning us to face the runway, we're dropping out of the cloud finally, at 3,500 feet. So we can switch the display over now to approach mode. There's the localizer, which tells us if we're on the center line of the runway, that's the direction of the runway. And there's the glide slope. So we're going to go to approach mode now on the autopilot. So it will capture the glide slope. We have to approach the glide slope from underneath it. So the aircraft should level out at 3,000 feet and fly into the glide slope. And then it will begin descending. Watch the vertical speed, there it goes. So it's holding the glide slope now and flying down it on a 3-degree angle straight into the runway that's right in front of us. So the airplane will be managing its speed now. We notice we've gone into speed mode, so it's up to us to get rid of the speed for finals. So if we say we want 150 knots, the speed will come off. We can go to the next level of flaps. Here they come.
2,500.
Say we want to go even slower, we'll say 140 knots or 130 even, and we can go full flaps. So I've set 130 knots on the target airspeed. Flaps have now travelled to 40 degrees. So the airplane's on approach mode and it's coming in and it's all looking good. Of course, this isn't actual flying, this is programming a computer and watching it. It's very rare that I let an airplane land itself. I'm going to today. So although we've only got single channel on the ILS, so we'll keep an eye on this and see what it says as we get closer. I think on single channel you shouldn't be able to do auto land. Ah, that's because we haven't turned both on, of course it is. So we'll turn both on. So both autopilots are now operating. This is why you tune both navigation radios. I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think, let's just have a quick look. I don't think it tells you this in Navigraph actually, what the spec of the ILS is. It might do on the chart. Cat 2 and 3, Cat 3 refer to minimums. Maybe it can. Okay, so we're just watching. Yes, it's gone to flare mode, so it is going to do it. It just took a while to configure. So it's going to do a full auto land. If you go to flare mode, you've got auto land. So should we watch this outside for a change? Because we never see things from outside. So this is a payware version of Edinburgh. I think it's the Pilot Plus version. They did go a bit mad with it. It's very, very detailed, which does mean the frame rate gets absolutely destroyed. But it's great fun taxiing around and being nosy. So should we, how do we want to see this? Do we want to see it from this side? see the flare mode in operation. I'm ready to press end to go back inside the cockpit and start steering. I think it will hold the centre line all on its own now in auto land. And it's flaring, and there go the engines, cut away, and very gentle. And I'm going to start steering. So, reverses. And flaps can come up. So we really did very little flying today. It was a bit of a joke really. And that there's AI aircraft landing the wrong way again, going against the wind. And we've lost our connection to the internet apparently. And it's back on again. So we'll slow down to taxi speeds, and we go and switch off the lights, put the position lights on solid instead of strobing, and on the run into the terminals we can go and turn the APU back on. We have got our taxi light on, haven't we? We have now. No, that's the taxi light was on. That's fine. So again, this is it's a payware version of Edinburgh, and it's going to crater the frame rate, but it does look pretty. So this is obviously a fire training fuselage alongside the runway. It's a nice cheery thing for the crews to see as they come in, isn't it? Though I suppose it's good in a way. It means that, you know, they've got very good facilities for teaching the fire crews. So is this going to be similar to the kamikaze vans we get on the parking areas? Oh no, he's just disappeared. Interesting. So yeah, you can see this is pretty much a photorealistic recreation of Edinburgh. It's absolutely insane. Where are we going to go? We'll go to the nearest gate because we're not following proper procedures. Just going to pull in and end our flight for the day. I guess we should be coming into this one from an angle, so let's just skid the front tires across the concrete, why don't we? Okay. So we've got the parking brake on. We have to hold the toe brakes on to do that. We are on the APU, so we can transfer power over to the APU. We can turn off the klaxon there, and then once we're on the APU we can switch the engines off safely. And then we can obviously work our way around all the switches, switching everything off around the aeroplane. First thing obviously you would do is get rid of the fuel pumps. You'd leave one on for the APU, and then go around all the lights and everything that you've been switching on and using, and air conditioning, environmental control. But yeah, it's all pretty straightforward stuff. You just work backwards. I'm not going to do all of that today. Today was all about showing you, if you're using an Xbox, how you can make flight plans. So yeah, hopefully that was interesting to you. And welcome to Edinburgh. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again soon.